Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Modern Day Unicorns. Today, I have Ryan with me, and he has a wealth of knowledge and experience in his lane, and I'm going to let him share more. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Abby.
Thank you. Awesome. So let's get right into it. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe what you went to school for, and what you're doing present day?
Okay. Well, I'm from Marietta, Georgia. I graduated from Life University undergrad, and then I actually played basketball overseas for about 4 years. So after basketball, I decided to go to law school. I went to law school at Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And for some reason, I wanted to go to the Big Apple. So, after I graduated law school, I decided to take the bar in actually Washington State, but Washington State has reciprocity with New York. So by taking the bar in Washington State and passing the bar in Washington State, I could transfer my score and everything to New York. So somehow, I decided to come to New York in 2017, and I've been up here ever since. So my office is in Manhattan. It's in Midtown, 260 Madison Avenue. It's between 39th and 38th Street on Madison Avenue. I'm also licensed in Connecticut, and I'm also licensed in Washington State. So right now, I'm kind of just starting my practice. As a professional, as a lawyer, I'm probably still just getting my feet wet. But I was able to come into the practice where things were starting to go very digital. And that's something that I could use to my advantage. Being able to use computers, laptops, phones, everything now in the courts is remote. 95% of all my hearings are remote. So, yep, I'm up here in New York, and I have a daughter. She's 2 years old, and I have a fiance.
Now, that's amazing. For those of you who don't know, I like to reach out quite a bit to your network. And when I say network, Ryan and I actually went to high school together. Now, he is I think a grade older than me, but I was familiar with him throughout. And I think you're the one I share a birthday with. Is that correct? Are you January 29th?
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, there we go. Birthday twin as well. So we're familiar with one another, and I think that it's important to point out that you always stay, connected to your network in some way, shape, or form, and social media has helped that. So this is how this particular interview came to be. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into the fact that, after you went to college, you went and you played overseas. What was that like for you?
Well, that was, something that I felt like I had to do. For whatever reason, I felt like I had unfinished business from high school basketball and from college basketball. And I felt like I just had, more to give to the game. I really wanted to travel. So after I graduated, I literally walked across the stage, I think December 10th, 2010. And I was on a plane to Germany December 18th or 19th. So I actually spent Christmas in Germany, and that was my first birthday in Germany in 2010. And it was when I think about all the risk involved with my with my story, I was very dedicated. So I played 4 years. I loved it. I really liked it. It's a very different culture. Things close at 8 o'clock. You don't have as many fast food restaurants. Even the grocery stores are very different. So it was a transition, getting used to being in a different country, literally being submerged into that country, living in a flat, with college students at the time. It was like because I was kind of in a college city. So I would, get up in the morning, I had a bike and a car. Most of the time I would bike, and I would just go to the grocery store every day and kind of walk around and, Germany is really cool, and Europe is really cool with the cobblestone ground and the cobblestone roads. And then they're famous for having roads that you really can only use a bike on, or maybe a really small car, because it's such an old country. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I think it really matured me. 4 years, it was kind of like me having 4 years to study whatever I wanted to study. All I had to do was go to practice. I had a game a couple of days a week, and I had nothing but downtime. I didn't have any family. So I would read a lot. I would study a lot. But overseas, I tell everybody, overseas is when I fell in love with public transportation. Growing up in Marietta, we don't have the best public transportation. We have the CCT, and my mom uses the CCT, but we don't necessarily have the trains. MARTA, I don't think, goes out to Cobb County. So it's not a very sophisticated system. Whereas overseas, my first year, I was in Nuremberg, which is a really big city, beautiful city. And their public transportation was really, really sophisticated. I really liked it, 24 hours. Very similar to New York, even cleaner though, very clean. And I felt like it was such an easy way to travel. Being overseas, not being able to speak the language, I didn't want to get caught anywhere and get lost. So when I did drive, I would be very, very particular about where I drove. I would drive to practice, maybe to the grocery store, but I wouldn't want to travel, from city to city simply because if I got lost somewhere and they didn't speak my language, I don't want to be in that situation. So over there, I kind of got comfortable with public transportation. So when I came up here to New York, I fell in love all over again, being able to hop on a train. I can get to Brooklyn in 12 to 14 minutes. I don't have to worry about traffic.
Parking.
Or parking. Parking is ridiculous in New York. The tri-state area, all of it. So I love the experience I had. I really appreciate it. I think my fiance, she kind of gave me an opportunity to go have fun, carefree for 4 years. And at that same time, she was probably finding herself as well, because I met her in undergrad. That, and we'll talk about that later. She's played a big role in just, me kind of going into these different phases of my life. But again, overseas basketball is a lot of fun, stress-free. I didn't have to worry about paying taxes. I didn't have to worry about, because they would tax it before I received it. I didn't skip out on taxes. But I didn't have to worry about taxes. I didn't have to worry about, where I lived. They would give me a place to stay. They would give me a car. So literally the money that I received would just be something I could put into a bank account. So it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like college for 4 more years. But I really, really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. And as you
Mm-hmm.
say that, I'm coming up on my 4th year living abroad. So I live in the UAE. I was in
Mm-hmm.
Dubai for 3, and now I'm in Abu Dhabi, which is like an hour and a couple minutes away. But I can attest to the fact that living abroad is an amazing experience, being able to be engulfed
Mm-hmm.
in other people's culture and just learn more about what life is like outside of the United States. So shout out to you for going ahead and taking a big leap. Did you spend all 4 years in Germany?
All 4 years in Germany. So I would leave every year in August, which was tough because my fiance's birthday is the beginning of August. So every year around her birthday would be kind of rough. But I would leave in August. Sometimes I would come back for Christmas. I think out of the 4 years, I came back 1 year for Christmas. And then I would go back in January when the season started back up. And we would come back officially. I would come back to the States in May. So the years where I didn't come back for Christmas, I would be there from August until May.
Mm.
So I would just have that June, July, to really have, I would have a summer.
It's like a
Each year I would
school
have a
schedule.
summer. Yeah. 10 months out of the year I was in Germany.
Mm. Now let's talk about, you can share with us what you actually went to undergrad for, but then I'd love to know how you went from basketball to like the courtroom. How did that manifest itself for you? Say, you know what, I want to be a lawyer.
funny. So, I grew up playing basketball, and I've always had somewhat of a smart mouth. I've always liked to talk to some degree. And coaches, they would always say, you got a smart mouth. You want to be a lawyer. And this is even when I'm in middle school, I believe. Um, and then in high school, I think it was my senior year. It was my senior year. I had all the credits I needed to graduate. So I did the externship program where I would essentially from 12 o'clock noon until 2 or 3 o'clock, I would be interning. And I interned with a lawyer. They asked me who I wanted to intern with, and I said I want to intern with the lawyer. And that was her first time ever being a lawyer. It was a Black woman. At that time, she was probably in her, um, you know, mid to late 30s. And, we connected right away. She would, kind of tell me to go to the courtroom and just observe. She would tell me about her cases. I would read briefs. I would, go to court with her. I would help her. And I think, and she would take me around town. I would meet all these important people. We would go to lunch every day at a different restaurant just so she can kind of quiz me and kind of ask me questions and kind of just get to know me. So, she really confirmed that I could do it. I think before my internship in high school, I didn't know if I could be a lawyer because there are no lawyers in my family. So when I was able to intern my senior year in high school, I loved it. She's still my mentor today. Her husband went to Wake Forest as a doctor. So we kind of had that connection. So when Wake Forest was on the list, it was kind of a no-brainer because, it just felt right. But she's been pivotal in my life. So she had a big, big part or played a big part in just confirming that I could do it. So, when I was in college, I always talked about being a lawyer. I knew at some point I wanted to be a lawyer after basketball. So that was something that I had already decided before I went to college. So that was already something I had already decided. My fiance, I met her at Kennesaw State in 2000 and I guess 2007, I believe. I even told her now, and that'll be relevant later. I even told her, I want to be a lawyer. And at that time, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but it sounded good too. So that would be one of my first lines to, every girl I dated. Oh yeah, I'm doing basketball now, but I'll do the law thing later. So I knew in high school that's what I wanted to do after basketball.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that goes to show just how important mentorship is and can be, like finding a good person, a good solid person from a young age, or even no matter what age you are, finding somebody that's going to invest that time and that information and encouragement in you is life changing. And so that's great to hear. As we transition, so you finished basketball, you've already decided, from high school that you were going to be a lawyer. You complete your 4 years abroad with basketball. So I'm assuming coming back home, was it as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to get into law school? What was that transition like coming back stateside, but then also having to study and get into law school? What was that like for you?
Well, so in 2000, I remember this very vividly because this was a part of my position statement for law school, to go into law school. But I remember in 2014, in May of 2014, I came back to the States. And at that time, my fiance, she was living in Alpharetta, Georgia. So I came home, she was excited to see me, pick me up from the airport. Maybe a week or so went by, everything was going well. But I just felt like, something was bothering her. And I'm talking to her and she's saying, I just feel like I don't know if I can do this long distance thing again. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? You said you want to be a lawyer. It's your fourth year overseas. You're 27 now. When are you going to go to law school? I think it's time you consider going to law school. I just can't keep doing I'm overseas for 10 months. And she would come over there for, like a month at a time, because she was a nurse, so she could take that time off, thank God. But it was still tough, to have a long distance relationship like that. So, she kind of gave me, I say she gave me an ultimatum. She doesn't say that, but, she kind of pushed me and said, I think if that's what you want to do, you need to do it. So that day, mid-May, I kind of started doing the research. I found out I had to take the LSAT in June. And, I studied for, about 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know how much time I had, but I just studied, studied. And I got into law school, so it was really a quick transition. I didn't really prepare for a year or prepare for 6 months. I just simply looked at the deadlines. I knew that, I had to take the LSAT on a particular date in the summer in order to apply for school in the fall. And I knew I just needed to get into law school. Luckily I already had the qualifications. One thing that my mentor told me in high school is that you need to be a well-rounded student. When you think about law school and you think about being a lawyer, you think everybody needs to be a political science major. But she made it clear that that's not something that I needed to do, that, I could be a history major, a business major. I just needed to know that I wanted to go to law school eventually. So I was able to get that bachelor's degree in 2010, which basically confirmed that I could go to law school. I just needed to take the LSAT. So I studied for 5 or 6 weeks and got into law school. And 3 years later, I graduated.
Shout out to your fiance for, putting that fire on you, like ultimatum or not.
For sure.
Like she definitely said, you said you want to do this, so let's go.
For sure.
That's amazing. All right. So you get through law school, you completed clearly, right? What type of law are you practicing?
Okay. So, again, I don't have any lawyers in my family, so I was kind of open to do anything. So when I was in law school, my first year, I interned with my mentor again in Georgia. My second year, I interned with a judge in Atlanta. And, he was my second mentor, African-American male, and just, RIP to him. But he passed away a couple of years ago. But, he was, one of those elite men. He went to Yale undergrad, Harvard law school. And then he became a judge, after I think being a public defender for 4 to 5 years. So this is somebody that could have gone out and probably, worked at any big firm and made a ton of money, but he decided to do basically juvenile law, where he basically would hear custody issues and those types of issues, custody mainly, and delinquency issue where the kids would be in trouble. And that's something that he loved to do. And I remember when I was interning with him, and really, it's crazy, maybe a week or so before he passed away, because he passed away, I want to say it was January 30th. He actually gave me a happy birthday, and then the next day, but maybe a week prior to that, we talked about, what I wanted to do after I graduated. And he said, if you don't know now, experiment. So that was my second year. So going into my third year of law school, I knew I needed to make a decision. And I was kind of focused on tax law. I knew that I wanted to do something that was somewhat nuanced. So people say that the quote unquote riches are in the niches, so I wanted to find my niche. I wanted to kind of find something that everybody didn't do or didn't want to do. So at first I wanted to do tax law, and I took tax law and I said, no, I don't want to do tax law, so when I came out, and my fiance, she's a nurse practitioner now. And when I was in law school, some of my friends would always say, Ryan, you have to do personal injury. You already have somebody on the medical side, you got to do personal injury, you got to do personal injury. And at that time, I didn't want to do personal injury. It just didn't sound like something I wanted to do. So when I came out of law school, and I didn't have to, but I wanted to set up my own shop. I wanted to start my own business right away. One just little nugget is that, he's not a mentor of mine, but he's more of a, I'd call him, more of like an idol. And his name is Willie Gary, and he's a black lawyer, and he's in Florida. And he actually spoke at a banquet at Wake Forest because one of my classmates, she clerked or interned with Willie Gary at his firm in Florida. And this is a guy, if you do your research on him, and I suggest that your listeners look him up, Willie Gary, out of Florida. He's worth about $200 million. And when he came out of law school, he wasn't able to get a job. He went back to his hometown in Stuart, Florida, couldn't get a job, so he just started his own practice. And, within years, he was a millionaire. And when he came to speak at our banquet, I had to ask him, hey, what do you think I should do? Should I try to work for somebody out of law school, or should I just, hang my shingle? And he said, you have to hang your own shingle. You have to go work for yourself. So after he told me that, I kind of just said, I'm not going to apply for any jobs. I'm just going to go and start my own practice. So that's why I really wanted to make sure I went to a city where I could get clients. I didn't want to have to, go to some small city where I had to fish for clients. So when I came up here, after, doing more research in law school, I took employment discrimination was one of the classes I took, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's a constitutional based area of law, meaning these are issues that the Supreme Court ultimately has to decide. Some things are state issues, like contracts, like torts, meaning torts would be if I sue somebody for hitting me, a car accident. But the constitutional law, those issues are usually worked out by the Supreme Court. So one of the things I've always had on my bucket list was to argue a case before the Supreme Court. So I wanted to take an area of law that was somewhat complicated and that would try to push me towards the Supreme Court. So coming out of law school, I graduated, came to New York, and a friend of mine, she had a friend that had filed a employment discrimination case here in New York, and I had just passed the bar, and I was able to negotiate a 6-figure settlement, months after passing the bar. And I really enjoyed it, more than the money, because I gave a lot of the portion to her. It was just the fact that I could kind of help somebody fight for justice, and so ever since then, employment law has been a big area of my practice. So I do, unpaid wages. If somebody were to be denied overtime, not denied in the fact where they're not saying you can work overtime, but if you work overtime and they don't pay you, I've had a couple of collective actions against some employers where they didn't pay overtime. And then I do employment discrimination, where it may be more individual, maybe more particular. Somebody believes that they were demoted or suspended or harassed on account of their race or maybe on account of their sex. So I do a lot of employment law and employment discrimination. And then I do medical malpractice. So I do car accident cases, but really I do more medical malpractice. So I do, like nursing home neglect, when elders are being neglected, they're not being turned properly, they're not being cared for properly. That's a big problem here in New York. And I've been able to represent families that were essentially neglected at nursing homes. Same thing for a medical malpractice. I may have a client who, because of the way their podiatrist treated their callus or their, whatever ailment they have, that toe had to be amputated, so now we have to sue the hospital and or doctor because he didn't do his job right. And now my client doesn't have, is missing a toe or two. So that would be medical malpractice simply because I'm suing a medical institution. And I think those cases are more complicated, they're more complex, but that kind of drives me, that complexity, that motivates me. I like to have something that I can kind of push towards every day. So those are my two main areas, employment and then personal injury, but more so medical malpractice.
And that's great. And so I am actually intrigued now when it comes to, because of COVID, of course, that now everything is digital. Like that is the craziest thing to me as well. And now it's almost a norm, I guess. How was it transitioning? I'm not really sure if you were practicing prior to COVID, but how was it transitioning from literally the courtroom to your computer screen? And like, let us know. It's like, is it Zoom or do they have like another platform that they use to carry out these cases? What does that look like?
So, yes, I started practicing in 2017. And when the pandemic became an issue, when the COVID-19 became an issue in 2020, in March of 2020, they shut down the courts. So I had several trials that were already scheduled in the year 2020, and they just got postponed. All trials got postponed. So while the trials are postponed, the judges are trying to figure out what they're going to do. The systems are trying to figure out what they're going to do. When I say systems, I mean the New York justice system and the Connecticut justice system, because I'm in both essentially every day. I have a lot of clients in both Connecticut and New York. They were trying to work it out. We didn't know exactly what to expect. So sometime maybe near the summertime, maybe June, July, May, everything went virtual. They basically sent out notices saying, everything's going to be virtual. You need to download these platforms. Most of the time, it's Teams. Trying to, have there been Zoom? I want to say they're mostly Teams. And they want to make sure that your lighting is right. You're still supposed to wear a suit and tie. It's supposed to be the same, just we're now remote. And for me, it's been an easy transition because I come from a tech era. I came, my first year in college is when Facebook started. So I remember when Facebook was only for college students. So I've been on computers. We used to do the webcams before every camera or every computer had their own camera. We used to put the webcams up, when I was in college, so, having a virtual or a remote hearing is easy for me. For some of the older lawyers, it's been, it's a problem, obviously. This is not something that they're used to doing. They don't like it. They're learning. If they want to continue to practice, they have to learn it. But for me, it's easy. This is something that I prefer. Now I don't have to go to sit in court all day. I make more money at home when I can, or in my office in New York, when I can do work. Being in front of a judge and arguing over emotion or something like that is important. But I tell people all the time, as a lawyer, as a civil lawyer, my job is essentially I write all day. I'm always writing motions, I'm always writing briefs, or I'm reading opinions, or I'm reading briefs. I'm always reading or writing. But I enjoy reading and writing. That's something that I've always excelled in. That's something that I've always enjoyed. So for me, I can work from anywhere now. Now I have the opportunity to work from anywhere. And all I have to do is open my computer and I can, appear for any hearing. So I love it. And I think most lawyers, eventually, if they don't already like the transition, they'll get used to it. Obviously, I don't want any trials to be remote. I want the trials to be essentially like they were. I don't want to have a trial where the jury is in a different room or the witness is in a different room. You want to be able to have that connection. You want to be able to see somebody's eyes. So that's why a lot of lawyers have been kind of pushing off on the jury trials until the court systems are prepared to have a in-person jury trial. You know, a lot of times people are opting for court trials now, where only the judge has to make those decisions. But most civil lawyers prefer juries. So the juries are, you know, the trials dockets are still backed up. You know, I have a lot of trials in 2022 at the end of this year and in 2023. So we'll have to see if those cases don't settle, what will happen. But 99% of civil cases settle. You know, if they're not dismissed at some point in the process, and they actually are sanctioned to go to a jury, meaning a judge is going to allow the issues to go before a jury, those cases, 99% of the time, they settle. You know, so that's why the system hasn't all the way broken down, is because a lot of these cases settle. Only 1 or 2% of these cases actually go to a jury. So it's not as backed up as it probably should be because of all the trials that are on the docket. Fortunate for the system, you know, a lot of these cases settle, you know, the day before trial, you know, or 2 days before trial, or, you know, a week before trial. So it's been different. I haven't had a trial since the pandemic, so I don't know how different it's going to be. But in terms of just having a hearing, you know, just wanting to go over the schedule with the judge, or maybe we have some type of dispute about discovery, having that in the remote virtual setting is beautiful.
Yeah,
I
I
love
was
it.
going to ask, you know, that classic dramatic question when you see these lawyer programs on TV, like, how do you object on Microsoft Teams? Is there a button objection?
Yeah,
Like,
you know, you know, the judges are really good, because in a courtroom, the judges get really upset when people are talking over each other, because we have a court reporter. So there's always somebody that's writing down everything that everybody says. So if people are talking over each other, he's going to stop and say, hey, the court reporter couldn't hear that. Or the court reporter may stop you and say, hey, what did you say? So we're programmed to talk after the other. So at a hearing, the only difference is maybe I'm not going to be as persuasive as I would be directly in front of you. I mean, you can still see me, I can still talk to you, but you know, it's different when you're in the same room. So you can still make your argument. You know, the judges are good at kind of eliminating the distractions and kind of getting strictly to the law. A lot of times these judges already know what they're going to decide before you get to the hearing. You know, they want to essentially hear what the lawyers have to say, but the lawyers have to submit their briefing, their writings, before we get to the hearing. So we're not going to, you know, say anything at the hearing that the judge doesn't already know from us briefing him. You know, essentially we brief the judge, and at the hearing, the judge is going to decide based on reading everything, you know, what they decide, you know, which way they should go. But they're going to be presented with those issues prior to the hearing. So at the hearing, we're just re-articulating what we've already said, and that gives the judge an opportunity to ask questions. That's really more so what it's for. It's for the judge to say, okay, I read your brief. This is my question for you. I read your brief. This is my question for you. You know, what do you have to say about, you know, some of the issues that he posed in his brief? You know, he gets to kind of see what our stance is on different issues. But ultimately, you know, if your legal argument is adequate, you're going to get the ruling you want, whether you're in person or on a computer screen.
Nice. Now, before we start to land the plane, we were speaking a little bit earlier about the importance of mentorship. So my question to you is, do you have any mentees? And if you don't, how do you plan on trying to give back in that area?
Great question. So official mentees, no. When I was in law school, I coached at a local recreational league. You know, a lot of the law students would participate, and they would coach these young men and women. These would be, you know, anywhere from 10-year-olds to maybe 15 and 16-year-olds. And I did that for 3 years in law school. When I came up here, I didn't really know too many people, so I couldn't just jump into a mentorship role. I have a brother who's 10 years younger than me, so I have a lot on my plate trying to kind of make sure he goes in the right direction. A lot of my time is spent talking to my little brother, but he's getting older now, and what my plan is to start going to schools, just trying to kind of get my face out there, talk to people, let them know that there are African American lawyers out there, Black American lawyers out there, and that they don't all look like what you see on TV, maybe. So I am going to get out there more. Hopefully, as my daughter gets older, I'm going to coach her sports team, so I'll be able to have that, those kids that are directly on the teams. But yeah, I do want to kind of, spread my 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 influence per se, and talk to the kids. But I guess I'm still looking for the right path, the right avenue to do so.
I can concur with that. Like it takes a lot of effort to pour in what you would like to pour into people, and making sure that you have the right fit is critical. So I would say take your time on that and continue to do what you're doing, building up your story so that you can share it with those individuals when the time comes. Now, as we come to a close, I like to ask each and every guest to give 3 tips that they would want to tell the youth or anybody looking to be in a similar position, or just some words of encouragement that people can apply like today. Do you have any tips that you can offer our listeners?
Absolutely. I think number one, I think that you have to be ambitious. I think you have to set goals that are really big, and you have to really embrace the idea that no dream is too big. A lot of times there may be naysayers, there may be people that don't have the same faith that you have in your idea, but you have to understand that, that higher power put that into your spirit, and that it wasn't placed into your mom or your dad or your brother's spirit, and that simply because they don't 100% support you is not a reason for you just to forego your dreams. You should definitely run after those dreams, and set really, really big goals. Number 2, I would say discipline. Whatever your goals are, you have to be disciplined. When I was in law school and I had to prepare for the bar exam, we finished law school. I graduated in mid-May, and I took the bar exam in late July 20th, I believe. It's a 2-day exam. So from May 15th until July 20th, you're studying for the bar exam. And I remember, at that time, I was listening to a lot of Eric Thomas. He was kind of inspiring me. I'm sorry about that. He was kind of inspiring me. And I told myself that I'm going to, create a real schedule. So, when I was preparing for the bar, I woke up every morning at 5 a.m. I woke up every morning at 5 a.m. And then I went to the gym, because what people tell you is when you're preparing for something like a bar exam, like a big standardized exam, that you need to exercise. One of the problems people have is that they're studying, and they're not putting that time and effort towards exercise. So I said, okay, and Eric Thomas, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's famous for getting up at 3 a.m. So, he talks about getting up at 3 a.m., And I said, I don't know if I can do 3 a.m., but I can do 5. And sometimes it will be 4. But I would wake up every morning, 5 a.m., go to the gym. I would go to LA Fitness. I would work out. And then I would go to Starbucks, and I would study all day. I would go home, eat dinner, and then I would study some more. My fiance at that time, we lived together, and she totally understood, the breadth of the challenge ahead of me, that I really had to be focused and disciplined. And she was great. She would work more at the time so that she would give me that time to be by myself. You know, I had a really big board in college, a big dry erase board. It was probably, really big. I still have a dry erase board. And that's something that really helped me. You know, I would write on that board all the time. I'd just sit in the room and write down the law. So discipline is very, very, very important. Whatever you want to do, you're going to have to be disciplined, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. You know, discipline comes with sacrifices. So I had to sacrifice sleep for 60 days, and after 2 or 3 weeks, it's easier because you're falling asleep earlier because you're waking up earlier. So number 2 would be discipline. And then number 3, there's a book written by Carter G. Woodson. It's called The Miseducation of the Negro. And one of those chapters, he talks about the Negro being an autodidact and trying to be unique. And that he was saying one of the issues with people in general is that they're not comfortable being unique, and that they don't see the greatness and the beauty in being unique. And sometimes teaching yourself. One of the things I did when I came up here is I became extremely resourceful. I would find law libraries and I would just teach myself, how I'm supposed to write a motion. I would go and look at the templates online, and a lot of times lawyers cut corners. So because I was looking at all these templates online that's telling you exactly how it should be done, my motions are coming in looking very professional, whereas a seasoned lawyer may be a better lawyer, or he may know the law better than me. He's cutting corners, and if you come into the profession trying to learn how somebody else does it, you may pick up bad habits. So, one of the things, that's really put me above a lot of my peers is that I know how to teach myself anything dealing with the law. Whatever area of the law it is, I can teach myself. Whereas some lawyers who have never had to be resourceful, they simply refer those cases to somebody else. So I've been able to get large verdicts and large settlements because I take hard cases. And I'm able to take those hard cases because I've taught myself, how to draft motions, how to find information, because the law is simply about finding information. The law, there's already been a precedent, meaning there's already been a ruling on just about every area of law. You just have to find those rulings that help your case. So it's all about research, and I'm a really good researcher. So I think that all comes from just me having the confidence to come out and be myself and teach myself. Obviously I have a lot of mentors that I call and I say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I always hear them out, but that doesn't mean I'm going to follow their approach. I want to hear everybody's approach, and I generally do what feels right to me. So ambitious, be ambitious, be disciplined, and be unique.
Those are wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that. And also, once again, your time. I know that you are a busy man. So thank you so much for all the time that you spent. We cannot end this call without you, please, sharing the information on where people can contact you, maybe just to follow and support you, or maybe if they even need your help with some cases or some information, I'm sure in that New York and Connecticut area. Can you please share the information with us?
Thank you, Abby. So again, my office is in New York City. My address is 260 Madison Avenue. I'm on the 8th floor. It's Suite 8032. My IG is, I believe, RD_Daugherty _ESQ. And my Twitter handle is at Daugherty ESQ. So my last name is spelled DAUGHERTY. My website is www.daughertylawgroup.com. My company name is Daugherty Law Group, and so that's my handle for the
Awesome.
website.
Congratulations on everything that you've accomplished and also your new practice. I look forward to seeing more great things that you're doing. So for everybody who's been listening up, remember to stay encouraged and to dream big. That's one of the key points that I have here today, and just make it happen. So if you are a unicorn or you know somebody that is, I'd appreciate having a conversation with them. You can comment below or shoot me a DM. And until next time, oh, don't forget, you can follow us at Modern Day Unicorns on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff. So until next time, we will see you. Thank you so much again, Ryan.
Thank you, Abby.